Chapter 20. Kuang Chao Jin meets good fortune in the capital. Niu Puyu dies far from home at Wuhu. When Kuang Chao Jin saw the warrant, his face turned pale. He felt as if his skull had been split open and icy water poured in. For though he could not say so, he was thinking, I was involved in 2 of these cases. If he's put to trial and cross-examined, heaven help me. He and Qing Lan Chiang said goodbye to the officer and went out to the street, where Qing left him. Kuang was too worried that night to sleep, but when his wife asked what the trouble was, he did not tell her the truth. I have been recommended to the Imperial College and must be going to the capital to become an official, he said. You can't stay here by yourself. I shall have to send you to my home in Yuanqing County to stay with my mother while I go to Peking. If all goes well, I shall ask you to join me. Don't worry about leaving me, said his wife. I shall stay here and get my mother to come over and keep me company. But don't ask me to go to the country. I'm not used to that kind of life. That wouldn't do at all. I don't understand, said Kuang. While I am here, I can make enough to live on. But once I'm gone, how are you going to manage? Your father can barely support himself. He can't feed you as well. I can't send you there. In any case, I can't send you there in any case because they don't have enough room. Remember that now I'm going to be an official, you'll be a great lady. So if you lived there, that would look too undignified. No, you must go to my home. We can raise 40 taels by renting these rooms, and when I've taken what I need for my journey to the capital, you can put the rest in my brother's shop and draw a little each day. Things are cheap in our part. We can eat chicken, fish, duck, and meat every day. What's wrong with that? Still, his wife would not hear of going to the country, and when he insisted, she lost her temper, and they had several angry, tearful scenes. In the end, not caring whether she consented or not, Kuang asked a man in the bookshop to sublet the house for him, and came home one day with the money. When his wife still refused to leave, he asked her parents to talk her around. Mrs. Cheng sided with her daughter, but Mr. Cheng, influenced by the fact that his son-in-law would now be an official, scolded his daughter sharply and called her a silly girl. Realizing she could not have her own way, she finally gave in. A boat was hired and the household goods put on board. Kuang asked his brother-in-law to take his wife home with a letter to his brother, explaining that she would invest some money in the shop and draw what she needed each day. Soon the day of departure came. His wife bade a tearful farewell to her parents, boarded the boat, and left. Kuang Chao Jin also packed and went to the capital. There, his patron, Censor Li, was delighted to hear he had passed another test and been selected to enter the Imperial College. An examination is shortly to be held to select tutors, Li told him. I shall be in charge of it, and I can guarantee you will pass. You better bring your lugger chair and stay with me for a few days. A few days after Kuang had accepted this invitation, his patron asked if he were married. Kuang feared such a high official might despise him if he said that his father-in-law was a runner in the provincial yamen. Not yet, he answered. Well, it's high time you were, said his patron. You reached the age when a man should marry. I'll find you a wife. The next evening, Li sent an old steward to the library. The master sends you his respects, sir, he said to Kuang. Yesterday you mentioned that you had not yet taken a wife. Our master's niece, who has been brought up by our mistress, is now 19, and both beautiful and talented. She is here now, and our master would like you to marry her. Sir, he will defray all the wedding expenses so as not to trouble you. He will defray all the wedding expenses so as not to trouble you. He has sent me to ask your consent to this union. This was a terrible shock to Kuang Chao Jin. He wanted to declare that he was married, but he had stated to the contrary the previous day. He feared that to accept would be wrong, until it occurred to him, there was an opera about Tsar, the #1 scholar who had 2 wives, and it was considered a great romance. I suppose it doesn't matter. So he consented. The censor was delighted. He went in to tell his wife the happy news, chose an auspicious date for the wedding, and prepared lanterns, decorations, and a dowry worth several hundred taels for his niece. When the day arrived, drums and cymbals struck up as Kuang Chao Jin, dressed in God's cap, round collar, golden belt, and black shoes, bowed to the censor and his wife. Then, to the accompaniment of stringed instruments, he was led to the bridal chamber. When the bride's red veil was removed, he saw that Miss He-sin, the bride, was lovely enough to outshine the moon, and put the flowers to shame. And not only was she a ravishing beauty, but she had brought him a sizable dowry into the bargain. Kyuang felt he was gazing at a goddess, and his spirit had flown to heaven. So he lived in luxury with his new wife, enjoying several months of more than earthly happiness. The time soon came, however, when Kyuang Chaojin passed the examination for tutors and had to return to his own province to get a testimonial from the local authorities. With tears in his eyes, he said goodbye to his wife and set out for King. And his first act on reaching Hangzhou was to call on his other father-in-law, Mr. Ching. Great was his consternation when he went in to find the old man's eyes red-rimmed with weeping, his brother sitting there on the seat of a guest, and his mother-in-law wailing in the inner room. In bewilderment, Kyuang bowed to his father-in-law. "When did you arrive, brother?" he asked. "Why is everyone crying?" "First bring your baggage in," said his brother. "When you've washed and had a cup of tea, I'll tell you." After washing, Kyuang went in to greet his mother-in-law. But pounding the table and banging the bench, she rounded on him tearfully. "You're at the bottom of this," she cried. "But for you, my girl would still be alive." Only then did he realize that his first wife was dead. He hurried to the outer room to question his brother. "After you left and your wife came home," said Kyuang Ta. She was so good that mother was very pleased with her. But coming from the city, she wasn't used to our country ways. She couldn't do any of the work your mother-in-law She couldn't do any of the work your sister-in-law does. But she didn't like to sit idle while her mother-in-law and sister-in-law waited on her. She worried so much that she started coughing blood. Mother's health is good, so she looked after your wife instead of the other way round. But that only made your wife feel worse. She went into a decline, and because there are no good doctors in the country, in less than 100 days she died. I've only just arrived. That's why Mr. and Mrs. Ching are crying." Kyuang could not help shedding tears. "What of the funeral?" he asked. "When your wife passed away," replied Kyuang Ta, "there wasn't a cent in the house. I couldn't take money from the shop even if I had, and even if I had, it wouldn't have been enough. There was nothing for it but to give her the funeral clothes and coffin prepared for her mother." "Quite right," said Kyuang Chaojin. "After we laid her out," continued his brother, "there was no place in the house to keep the coffin, so we've left it behind the temple until you go back for the burial. You're here just in time. You had better pack up at once to come back with me." "It's not yet time for the burial," said Kyuang Chaojin, "but I think I still have a few taels left." "Take them back and add some more bricks to the wall around the coffin, till it's strong enough to last a few years. As her father just said, she's a lady now. When you return home, engage a painter to make a portrait of her in her phoenix headdress and embroidered costume, and during festivals sacrifice to her at home, and tell her daughter to burn incense to gladden her spirit. Last time I went home, I had an embroidery dress made for mother too. When relatives ask her out, she should wear it to look different from the common herd. Another thing, when you go back, you must tell the villagers to address you as Sir. We'll have to live in style and keep up appearances. When my post is decided, I shall ask you and your wife to come to share my splendor." So dazzled by this speech that they nearly fainted, Kyuang Ta promised to do as he was told. That evening, the Chings prepared a feast for Kyuang Chaojin, and he slept in their house. The next day he went out to make some purchases, and gave several dozen taels of silver to his brother to take back. 3 or 4 days later, Ching Lan Chiang came to look for him, accompanied by his relative Chiang, who was a clerk in the district yamen. When they saw how cramped Mr. Ching's house was, they suggested going to a tea shop. This was no longer the same Kyuang Chaojin, however, whom they had known. While not refusing in so many words, he made it quite clear that he did not want to go out to the tea house. Ching understood his reluctance and said, "Now that Mr. Kyuang is coming here to get a testimonial from the local authorities before taking up an official position, it probably would not be quite the thing for him to sit in a tea shop. I have been wanting to ask you for a feast anyway, so let us go to a restaurant. That would look more dignified." Thereupon Ching invited them to a tavern. "Sir," he asked when the wine had been poured, "is your present post as tutor one likely to lead to promotion?" "It certainly is," replied Kyuang. "Scholars like myself who reach officialdom through proper channels are imperial tutors whose pupils are the sons of nobles." "Is it like ordinary teaching?" "Indeed not. Our college is like a yamen, with official seats, vermilion ink, brushes and inkstones set out in proper order. When I take my seat there in the morning, if a pupil sends in a composition, I have only to mark it with my vermilion brush for him to retire. My lowest-ranking students are officers of the third rank by inheritance, and if they accept official posts, they become provincial governors or generals. For they will always have to kowtow to me. Take the libationer of the Imperial College, for instance, who is my tutor. He's the son of the present Prime Minister, so the Prime Minister counts as my grand tutor too. The other day, when the Prime Minister was ill, he refused to see all the court officials who went to inquire after his health, but asked me alone to sit on his bed to talk to him for a while. When Kuang had finished speaking, Chiang said slowly, "Our friend, Pan number 3, is still in Gale. The other day he told me very eagerly that he had heard you had come back, sir, and that he would like to see you to talk over his troubles. I don't know how you feel about it." "Pan number 3 is a stout fellow," said Kuang. "Before this trouble of his, when he invited us to taverns, he would order at least 2 ducks, to say nothing of mutton, pork, chicken, and fish. He wouldn't touch the kind of set meal this place serves. It's a pity he's in this fix. I would have gone to Gale to see him, but my position has changed. As a servant of the throne, I have to abide by the law, and to call on him in such a place would show no respect for the law." "You're a local official," countered Chiang, "and you would only be visiting a friend. What harm can there be in that?" "Gentlemen," said Kuang, "I shouldn't say this, but to friends it doesn't matter. In view of what our friend Pan has done, if I had been in office here, I would have had to arrest him. If I were to go to the prison to call on him, it would look as if I disapproved of his sentence. That is not the way of a loyal subject. Besides, all the Yamans here know I have come back for my testimonial. If I were to go to the Gale and the story reached my superiors, my official reputation would be ruined. How can I do such a thing? I will trouble you, Mr. Chiang, to send my regards to Pan number 3 and tell him that I shall remember him. If I am lucky enough to be appointed to some profitable post on my return to the capital, I shall be glad to send him a few hundred taels in a year or so to help him out." The other 2 saw he was not to be persuaded. When the meal was over, they parted, Chiang going to the Gale to tell Pan number 3 what had happened. When Kuang Chao Jin received his testimonial, he packed up and boarded a boat on which he had booked a berth to Yang Chao. He found 2 men sitting in the middle cabin, an old man dressed in a pale yellow silk gown with silk belt and red shoes, and a middle-aged man in a sapphire blue gown and black shoes with white soles. Since both of them were wearing scholars' caps, Kuang greeted them, sat down, and asked their names. "My name is Niu Pu Yu," replied the old man. "I have long wished to meet you," said Kuang, who had heard of Mr. Niu from Ching Lian Chang. He inquired the name of the other. "This is Mr. Feng Cho An," answered Niu Pu Yu. "He has passed the provincial examination and is going to the capital for the next test." "Are you bound for the capital too, Mr. Niu?" "No. I'm going up the river to Wuhu County to call on a few friends. Since Mr. Feng and I are friends, we are traveling together, but I shall leave this boat at Yangchao to take the Nanking boat down the Yangtze. May I ask your honorable district, your name and your destination?" Kuang Chao Jin told them his name. "So you were the famous Chia King editor," said Feng. "I have read much of your distinguished work." "I have my share of literary fame," responded Kuang. "During the last 5 or 6 years since I went to Hangzhou, I have selected essays by students and scholars and written commentaries on the 4 books in the 5 classics and the anthology of ancient essays. According to the record I have kept at home, I have produced 95 volumes in all. Each time a book of mine is published, 10,000 copies are sold, and travelers from Shantung, Shaanxi, Honan, Shinxi, and Piachi fall over each other in their eagerness to buy, all dreading the possibility that it may have sold out. One of my works published the year before last has already been reprinted 3 times. To tell you the truth, gentlemen, scholars of the 5 northern provinces respect my name so highly that they often light incense and tapers to me on their desk, calling me Master Kuang of Sacred Memory." "Sir," Niu Pu Yu laughed, "that must be a slip of the tongue. Only the dead are described as of sacred memory. Since you are still among us, how can they refer to you in that way?" No, said Kuang, flushing. It is used as a sign of respect. Niupuyu decided not to argue with them. A certain Ma Chun Shang selects essays too, said Feng. What do you think of him? He is a good friend of mine, answered Chuang Cha-Jin, but although he understands the rules, he lacks genius, and therefore his books don't sell too well. And the circulation is most important, you know, for if a book doesn't sell, the bookshops lose money. My selections, however, are read even in foreign countries. They talked for several days until they reached Hangzhou, where Feng and Huang took a Huan boat to Wang family camp, then went ashore to proceed by land to the capital. Niupuyu went on alone by the boat down the Yangtze, past Nanking to Wuhu, where he lodged in a small temple called Sweet Dew Temple at Floating Bridge. The temple had 3 rooms in front, that in the center housing a shrine to Saint Vajrapani. The left-hand room, where firewood and straw were stored, was locked, while the right-hand room opened into a large courtyard, which led to the 3 main halls and the 2 rooms behind them. One of these rooms was occupied by an old monk, and Niupuyu now put up in the other. During the day he would go out to call on friends, and in the evening he would light his lamp and chant poems. Noticing that he seemed lonely, the old monk often brewed tea and took it to his room to talk to him till midnight. And when there was moonlight, they would sit in the courtyard to talk over past and present. They were on the best of terms. Then Niupuyu fell ill, and the doctor sent for prescribed many draughts of medicine to no purpose. One day, Niupuyu asked the monk to come to him and sit on the edge of his bed. I am over 300 miles from home, living here as a stranger. Yet you have looked after me very well, father, he said. I didn't expect to fall ill like this, but now it seems I'm done for. I have no children at home, only a wife under 40. And the friend who traveled part of the way here with me has gone to the capital for the examinations. So there is no one closer to me than you. I have 6 taels in the casket by my bed. And if I die, I'll trouble you to buy a coffin. I have some coarse cloth garments too, with which you might raise money to ask a few monks to say masses, so that my soul can mount to heaven. Just put the coffin on any vacant plot of land you can find, writing on it, Niupuyu, a scholar of the Ming dynasty. Don't burn my body. If relatives come from my home to take my body back, I shall be grateful to you in the nether regions. The monk could not help shedding tears. Set your mind at rest, he answered. To speak of bad luck usually brings good luck. But if anything should happen to you, I shall carry out all your wishes. Niupuyu then struggled into a sitting position to take from under the matting of his bed 2 books, which he handed to the monk. These 2 volumes contain all the poems I have written, he said. They don't amount to much, but all my friends are mentioned there, so I don't want them to be lost. I'll give them to you, father. If some future scholar should come across them and publish them for me, my ghost will risk content. The old monk received the poems with both hands. Then, seeing Niupuyu gasping for breath, he hurried anxiously into his own room to boil some nephilim and lotus seed broth. He took this to Niupuyu's bedside and helped him up in order to feed him. But the sick man was too weak to eat. After 2 sips, he sank back with his face to the wall. In the evening, the death rattle sounded in his throat, and with a last gasp for breath, he gave up the ghost. The old monk wept bitterly for him. This happened on the 3rd day of the 8th month of the 9th year of the reign of Jie Qing, when the weather was still hot. The old monk lost no time in taking the silver to buy a coffin, then laid the dead man out and asked a few neighbors to help him lift the corpse into the coffin. He also made time to don his priestly robe and take his clapper out to chant a requiem beside the coffin. Where can I put it? He wondered next. I better clear the firewood out of that room and put the coffin there. Telling the neighbors his plan, he took off his priestly gown, and with their help, stacked the firewood in the courtyard and put the coffin in the left-hand room. He also set a table there with incense burners, candlesticks, and pennons to call back the spirit. Their preparations completed, the old monk bowed to the shrine and wailed again. Then he invited all those present to sit in the courtyard while he brewed several pots of tea for them. He also prepared gruel and brought 20 caddies of wine, some wheat gluten and dried bean curd, and other vegetables, which he asked one of the neighbors to cook. When everything was ready, he set the dishes before the coffin, poured a libation, and bowed, then carried the dishes and wine to the guests in the courtyard. Mr. Niu was a stranger, said the monk, but he entered into his last rest here, leaving nothing behind him. And I couldn't do all that had to be done alone. Amitabha Buddha. I've kept you all busy for a whole day, and being a monk, I can't offer you a proper feast, but merely some wine and a few vegetable dishes. I hope you will consider doing good as its own reward, and not take offense at my lack of courtesy. We are all near neighbors, they answered. When anything like this happens, it is our duty to help. But we have cost you a lot of money, Father, and we feel very bad about it. Why should you talk like this? After finishing the wine, the dishes, and the gruel, they all went home. A few days later, true to his word, the old monk asked the monks from Good Luck Monastery to chant Buddhist canons for one whole day for Niu Puyu's soul. As for himself, morning and evening, when he chanted sutras or opened or closed the gate, he would go to the coffin to burn incense there and shed a few tears. About 8 o'clock one evening, the old monk had finished his evening devotions and was about to close the gate when he saw a young man of 17 or 18 with a folded paper in his right hand and a book in his left, coming to sit down at the foot of the shrine and begin to read by the light there. Unwilling to disturb him, the old monk let him read on until nearly midnight, when he left. The following day the youth came in again, and when he had done so for 4 or 5 days, the monk could not restrain his curiosity any longer. The next time the young man came in, he went up to him. "Where do you live, son?" he asked. "Why do you come here every morning to study?" The young man bowed to him, addressed him as father, and folding his hands respectfully told him his name. But to know who he was, you must read the following chapter.